Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, and today we are catching up with Mikey Densham and Kez Shu of Five Tails Farm down in Australia. Now, you will remember I just spoke with Mikey last month, and we are going to do one of these sort of chats per month where we catch up with them on what they have going on down there in the Southern Hemisphere while we were up here in the Northern Hemisphere resting or pretending we're resting. Plus, we'll talk one business element of farming each month. This round is about diversification of markets and killing dogmas with Mikey and Kez, and then one farm but not farm related conversation. This month, that one is about transitioning to having a small child and farming. I love these two. They are a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I thought it would be fun to just be able to talk with somebody in the middle of their season while we are in the resting season, and then vice versa. And also, I will just take any and absolutely every opportunity I get to chat with them. So this series is kind of incredibly selfish on my part. I'll own that. Anyways, let's do it. Kez and Mikey, welcome back to the show.
Great, thanks to have us.
Thank you.
So, what we're trying to do, or what we want to do, is try and catch up with you all every month. I like this because our seasons are, almost completely opposite. Like right now, everything is waning. Like we're slowing down. We're going into the winter, and you all are headed straight into the spring. So, I thought we could start by just, each of these segments, just kind of talking about like what's going on in the farm, literally like right now for you all, and I don't know, maybe what this week has looked like.
Yeah, well, we are in like peak spring madness and understaffed. So it's like, doesn't get better than this. So what did we do today? Today we actually trellised all of the tomatoes and all of the cucumbers. We this season dialed down a bit more the crops that make sense for us. And we've really upped our tomato production this year by like 3 times.
At least
Yeah.
too high, yeah.
So we got quite a lot of infrastructure built. A very big, nice multi-span greenhouse went up a month ago, which was just a bit of a chaos. And then everything's planted now with tomatoes. So today we were, pruning and trellising them, and kind of trying to do all of that whilst our main stuff haven't started yet. They start on the 1st of November.
Our seasonal stuff.
Sorry. So we have obviously us, which we can talk later because we're not full-time, both of us anymore. Jay, who's, our full-time employee, and then 2 seasonal workers usually started at the start of November. But now having so many of our crops, permanent crops for summer, spring has been just crazy trying to get everything in the ground on time.
So the last time when Mikey and I spoke, we talked about your markets are like primarily restaurants and that sort of thing, like more wholesale. So like when that's the case, are you really trying to push your seasons harder? Like, are you really like in this farmers markets, obviously, like we're trying to be the first to market with whatever it is. Are you all doing that so much?
It's really funny because I think, me and Mikey loved farmers markets. I think for me personally, I would still love to do farmers markets, but I think the context of where we are and the availability of markets, it's less relevant. But we actually found with a lot of restaurants that we didn't get that first season excitement as much as we wanted to. But it's definitely, I think for me, like the push to get, for example, zucchinis out, it's because that's when our income jumps up significantly. And that's because we start paying a lot more wages. Then that's kind of like once zucchinis pump, we know that we have that steady income, and that just relaxes the back end of things, which is a bit less romantic.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, Mikey, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. I think our focus here is just sometimes, it's less so like first to market, but it's how consistent can we be. Like once we launch something, it's how consistent can we be weekly to supply the restaurant. That seems to be the real key.
We actually have contracts. Like we have numbers that we need to hit and that our buyers are committed to buy. So a lot of our income is actually pretty stable, and it's up to us to meet that demand rather than trying to push what we already have. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, it does. And that's got to take a lot of pressure off in a way, because what a lot of growers end up doing is you grow what you know you can sell, but then you grow a little extra hoping you can sell a little bit more. And if you know what you have to grow to sell, then I feel like that takes a lot of the pressure off. Does that resonate?
Yeah, definitely. Because we've always been really meticulous with planning, we push our buyers to do things that they haven't done before. So we sit with them twice a year and we do like a very significant crop planning for both sides to make sure that we can hit their demand, but also then that we were like, oh, you said you're going to buy 80 kilos, so you have to buy those 80 kilos. Like we know to push them on our end. Which is kind of comfortable, to be honest. Like if we don't have enough, they don't make a big deal out of it. And if they don't buy enough, we tend to make a big deal out of it.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. We've run into situations where sometimes a restaurant is, in the beginning of the season, they'll say like, I'm going to need 25 pounds of lettuce every week. And, for the most part, we try and hit that, but sometimes we don't hit that. Or whatever it is, maybe, throughout all of our outlets, we just can't meet everybody's demand 100%. So we usually have like taken the approach of being like, okay, we're not going to push them too hard when they don't buy all of it, unless it's like really dramatic. If they say they're going to buy 25 pounds and they buy 0 or buy 5, then obviously we're like, can you try? But for the most part, yeah, we've been a little bit more flexible, but I kind of like the idea of just being like, this is like, we have to grow this. We try as best we can. And try and hit those numbers.
I would say as well, I don't know if Mikey you agree, that when you work with restaurants, it's a bit trickier to do it because they are a small business, usually just as much as you are a small business. And yeah, we those relationships, we don't tend to push that much, but the bigger customers that are bigger businesses have stronger backs, then we feel a lot more comfortable pushing because we know that they have a stronger base to come out of. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because that is my feeling too. Is like sometimes when you're working with a small business, you're like, I get it because like we're also a small business. But then yeah, sometimes when you're working with a larger organization, and they're like, yeah, we don't need it. We're like, well, you all can handle that, and it's harder on us.
It feels a lot easier to stand up for yourself in a way, rather than like when you're dealing with a chef and they're also an owner operator. Unlike you're dealing just with a buyer of this great but big company.
Yeah, I like that. I also like the point that you talked about with consistency. I think, for the wholesale market, it's much more about consistency than it is necessarily about getting to market early. And it makes me think like, so once you start producing zucchinis, you're basically doing that until, you can't anymore, right? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, and we've noticed that if there's a line, for example, we've worked hard with one customer to get on X many kilos of salad, like you were saying before, similar scenario, Jesse, and we faltered in the middle of winter for 2 weeks, and it was really hard to get. They found it hard to get certain customers back onto our lettuces when they had to supplement somewhere else. So for us, we realized that the consistency is the absolute key because for them, they're on their sales end. They're going to restaurants. They're trying to push our product. They're trying to sell it on our behalf. So we have to make sure that we've got it there weekly for them to sell, and then they can form those sold contracts with their buyers. So it kind of that trickle down effect of, who's supplying, who's demanding, and who's, so it's an important thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting element of it that I hadn't really thought about is like from their end, they're like, well, we're trying to sell this product to somebody else and, it's not as good when we have to supplement. So that person now associates that with us. So they're not going to buy that product anymore. I feel like that can get complicated quick and it certainly puts the emphasis on being consistent.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, it's not always the nicest thing to say, but like, maybe 10% out of the restaurants are those restaurants that you love and they love you and they're direct. We have a bunch of amazing restaurants that we work with directly and they're the chefs that like are in it for, for the passion, for like the ideology. But 90% of the restaurants are in for convenience. And you see it a lot when you deliver, like people there are head down and they want something and they need it now. That consistency serves those 90% rather than the 10% that like really understand seasonality or they understand the farm or they understand weather or whatever.
Right. I think that's an important factor in selling to restaurants too, is that these are extremely busy, overworked people a lot of times. And like they need things to just be there when they ask for them and what they expect. Otherwise it just throws a new wrench and they're just going to be like, how do I eliminate this other problem from what I'm doing if it's not consistent and it's not what they expect. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little business stuff. So BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Ari Memar, founder of Farmhand and a guest you've heard on this podcast, has worked with regenerative farmers to create a playbook that turns renewal season into a growth season. One farmer, Melanie at Shake Fork Community Farm, brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks using this strategy. Now, Ari and Melanie are sharing the exact approach in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook. Watch on demand and get the playbook at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, so let's talk a little bit of farm business stuff. This is also going to be a monthly segment we're going to do here with Mikey and Kez. So maybe talk a little bit about something that you're thinking about right now, as you're growing your business and sort of, getting this business up and running.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jess. I think one thing that we explored, and certainly it was something that came up a number of times when I was traveling around visiting a lot of big, medium, small-scale farming, is that a lot of these businesses, which are quite stable and profitable businesses, often have an element of diversification, whether it's diversifying within inside agriculture or it's diversifying outside of the agricultural sphere. But something that I found was pretty core is we like to call it like strategic diversification. I think that's the kind of rabbit hole that sometimes farms or small farms fall into, is that they diversify but not strategically. So then it ends up taking more time and more resources, and then it basically undermines their core enterprise, which is most likely actually agricultural production farming. So something we're exploring is how can we create more profitability in our business and stability through strategically undertaking other enterprises or other streams of income.
Do you have examples of what that looks like?
So, for example, I think it was a really nice one, is we've chosen, which I think a lot of small farms are. I
think it's good to say that they're not groundbreaking stuff right here, yeah, where it's not like rocket science. It's just taking a step into a different direction, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not reinventing any wheels.
No, not reinventing the wheel at all. I think the only part that I like to stress is the diversifying in a way which doesn't undermine your ability to handle it, whether it be resources or whether it be labor, which I see quite often. So for an example for us, Jess, is we chose to buy a farm which is in a very beautiful area. So that's an asset. I think we realized pretty quickly when people were visiting that our farm was incredibly beautiful. So we thought, okay, what's the opportunity around which would be low risk and low cost diversification for us? So in Australia, for example, there's a platform, it probably exists in the States as well, called HipCamp, which is basically Airbnb for campers. So we have a riverside paddock, which is not productive for agriculture or farming, but it is aesthetically incredibly beautiful. So across the year, currently, we probably make $8,000 a year. That was our first season opening up, simply from people coming into the farm, pitching a tent at the back of the farm away from our production space. And
it's not pitching a tent, it's coming with a caravan.
Sorry, you're right. So we chose to have...
So there's not even toilets or anything there.
To have caravans. But for us, it's enabled us to have a very easy cash flow in. $8,000 is not a small sum. It's a small sum, but also not a small sum, which we can then leverage for whether it be labor, whether it can be paying back mortgage, whatever it is. It's been a really, I think, helpful step in our thinking as a business for moving towards growth and I think stability as well.
And is there any upkeep that comes with that? I guess you're probably having to check the site to make sure it stays clean and those sorts of things.
Everyone leaves it really clean. We put quite a high price point on it for camping. So it usually draws, an older crowd that comes with only self-contained caravans. So absolutely no.
Yeah. And I think that's the kind of the point. That was the strategic thinking was, can we do this in a way which demands little time or no time essentially, and enough of a reward that makes it and justifies us doing it. And I think this has been a great example. And we're now coming into our second season and already seeing that income stream is growing, but without any more labor or demand on our time.
I don't know if this is going to sound familiar to you all, but I feel like there for a while, there was almost a negative viewpoint of having additional revenue streams beyond just farming. There was a push to be you just grow vegetables and that's kind of what you do, or you're not doing it right. And I think one of the things that gets overlooked in that is, the need for capital. That capital is really tough to come by. If you're a young person trying to start a very labor intensive business that's somewhat capital heavy intensive, that, it can be hard to come by enough capital to make it work. So I like this. I like this example, because it, like you said, it's not a ton of work. It is a good $8,000 is, that's your seed costs, or that plus like some other things probably throughout the season. And that can help you to get that season started and keep growing your business. Are there other examples that you've come across or that you all are sort of utilizing now?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think Jess, like you answered that, because I think that's really spoke to you, Kez. You have made that point a number of times around Jesse's point around this stigma.
Look, I'll go in a bit of a spiel. Let's hope it's not
Go for it.
But me and Mikey started our farming journey, both of us, on like ecological permaculture farms that are completely based on education. So their entire, revenue comes from tours and classes and da da da. And I think very early we got into production farming in this like younger mindset of like, if you're not doing 100% farming, then you're not making it work. And I think in our movement, that was a bit of the vibe in the early years. And now I think it's progressing and moving away from that. But it's like, if you're not like financially viable and it's 100% farming, then like it's, and I think for me, for a really long time, I had this fear about branching out or doing other things. And we just talk about like workshops or education, because I needed actually to feel that, just the farming works. And slowly branching out of that, but the farming still works. But in order to balance the up and down that is naturally agriculture, we found that the agritourism does it really beautifully. So we do have that hit camp, which was level 1. And now level 2 is that we're renting like a tiny acre in the top of our paddock that we're not using for someone else to put a tiny house on. They manage it. We can get the cleaning contract. So that's a little bit more money if we wanted to, cleaning a week. And then he pays us, it's not a lot, but he pays us monthly rent for hiring that spot. It does mean that, we'll have cars coming in and out of our driveway going up there. And that's something that we, considered. But now we have this contract there for 3 years. And after that, we'll see if we save up that money to build our own tiny house to rent, to see how it goes, to, get the feel if we like it or not. And then kind of like move the other step up to maybe having our own little platform after that.
With that tiny house, is that like sort of an Airbnb style rental place, or is that somebody that's staying there more permanent, more?
It's an external business that operates tiny houses, and he puts them on other people's land and pays rent to operate his business off it. So we have another business essentially paying us rent, and that's why he can also offer us, say a cleaning contract for cleaning his Airbnb. So which for us makes sense, because if we've got seasonal labor, after the peak season, there's an opportunity to actually have them on potentially part-time in the fields being farmers, and we can supplement the wage by offering them, if they would like to be cleaning, once a day for an hour, and the hourly wage for it is not half bad. So again, like Kez was saying, it's an opportunity for us to stabilize the business, which is agriculture. It is incredibly seasonally driven. And we spoke about last time, like greenhouses can help level out the seasonality of farming, but it's also really expensive to get greenhouses. So this, I think, is a really positive strategy for moving towards creating 4-season farms that take the pressure off the off-season for labor costs.
Yeah, I think that pressure element is really important, because a lot of times when you're going into the winter, you're exhausted and you're like, okay, it's going to be cold. I'm going to move slower, and I've still got all these, bills to pay. I've got labor to pay or whatever. And having something else that could supplement that's not even necessarily, in this case, relying on you if they're doing work essentially for somebody else, to make a little extra wages. I think that's like I don't know. I like that idea of it's a very, like you said, strategic diversification. It's very strategic. It's very diversified.
And also tapping into offering experiences. And if I'm honest, like everything in this world is going up in price, but vegetables do have this like glass ceiling. There's only so much we can charge or want to charge for broccoli, but creating an experience and bringing people onto the farm, whatever we want to take it to the next level, is something that we can actually have a lot more profit from. And I think us as a new family and having like a baby and wanting to have a bit more stability and wanting to have a bit more financial security, We did have a few breaking points last season where it was really hard. We got hit by mildew. Zucchinis and cucumbers finished a month early. It was super scary suddenly.
You were pregnant.
Like losing all of that. And we were just like, oh, she's waking up.
It's okay.
Yeah, and wanting to kind of tap into that.
I appreciate that your baby is segueing us nicely into the next segment, which is going to be, talking about farming with a little one. So we're going to take a quick break and then we will do that. Be right back.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right. So you all obviously have a young one now, and who is out? How old?
Raya is 9 months.
9 months. And so maybe just walk us through like how that, not only just pregnancy, but like pregnancy, having a baby, having an infant, and now having one that is slowly getting mobile. Like, what has that experience been like for you so far in terms of, how you look at the farm and how you're farming?
I think we can just do a whole series on that. And to be honest, I think it's lacking because I know when I was pregnant, I was like crazily looking for some example from someone who not only is a business owner, but has such a physical job and like understanding. Raya was born in peak season. Bad decision. If you can time it, which like me and Mikey, it took us, like we worked hard to get Raya. It took us a little bit of time to manage to get pregnant. So we couldn't really, it wasn't up to us kind of when she was born. But if you're one of the lucky ones and you can aim, then wow, peak season, January, terrible idea.
In fact, the funny story about that was that Raya she was born at home
on a harvest day.
So after she was born, probably about an hour after, I popped outside holding her in the team. I was like, "Hey guys, check out the baby." It was peak season, literally peak season. Everyone was around. It was crazy.
No, but like if we take it seriously, like I'll just touch quickly. Being pregnant for me was like fine. I just slowed down really towards the end. I needed like to go inwards a bit, but kind of cruised through it and worked and really loved it and helped me be, outside and mobile. But definitely like a huge, like disclaimer, I love her. She's the best thing ever, but it was a huge slap in the face. For me personally, just because farming is like such a big part of who I am. It's such a big part of like my self-worth, my self-esteem, like how I define myself, like working outside, working hard, being part of the team, and like all that just stopped completely. And then also me and Mikey have such different skill sets that we bring to the farm. And suddenly I couldn't do so much, physically couldn't do, for at least 3 months, a huge part of my work. And I think finding the balance of that, of like Mikey trying to suddenly tap into the stuff that I did and me wanting to be part of the farm, but really I couldn't. Yeah, it was really, really, really hard. Like I don't know, I missed it so much, and the farm definitely suffered a bit from it. Our workers worked very hard for the first, 3 months, trying to catch everything up. And I think now we're getting into the hang of things. Now me and Mikey, I got to the point where we could share the load a bit more. So, now maybe 2 days a week, I'll go outside and Mikey will stay with her and I'll come and feed her in the meanwhile. And it took me a while to like remember that I'm good at it. That like, oh, I am good at harvest and I can do this quickly. And it's like, I can do this just as Mikey can do it, because something about like my identity kind of shifted. And like my ability, because your body is obviously a bit out of shape. But from one hand, it's like the best thing when she's around and we're outside and we're doing things together. It's the best feeling in the world. But it's also like incredibly, incredibly challenging, I guess, to have no breaks, because we're constantly trying to catch up because one of us is out of doing something else. Yeah, it feels like a big, big big marathon, big race. But we're also in spring, and I need to remember that we're in this very, very busy time. But
Yeah.
wow, that was a really big blur.
But I think that's kind of what it is, though, isn't it? I think like it's really hard to prepare for. And then once it happens, you're just in it for months. And there's only so much, like I know as from my perspective, like I did everything I could think of to help Hannah, when we had 2 young kids, one and then another one later. And then we had, one that was 4 years older than the other one, which still requires a lot of work. Like I did everything I could, but it does really lock mom down to have, especially an infant. Those first 3 months are really, there's just nursing every, really, really regularly. So, yeah, it's a lot, and it's hard to anticipate that, and it's hard to like have a good plan for it. You know what I mean? Is there anything in retrospect that you're like, well, maybe this is one thing that I wish we'd known or I wish we'd sort of planned for?
I think having good people around is really important. And if I could, I would probably get someone who's a full-timer that's similar to me in personality, so they could take up some of the stuff that I did without it having to fall on Mikey. That's not his strength, which is more of like the organization stuff and, the scheduling and that sort of stuff.
Shout out to
Which is
our work with last year. Like literally they held the farm with Jay. Those 3 were just like, I think investing in incredible workers really made it easier for us to get through a really tough time.
Yeah, having people around you. I think we live a bit far out of the city and we're not really in a thriving community because this was where land was more affordable, and I think that's part of the conversation of like rural life and what does rural life mean, and being a bit further out from friends who live close to the city and family being far away. And I think that is definitely challenging. I know that I've had some chats with farming friends around the world, and they say, family and help and people around you is significant. And I think if we could have more of that, it would have been lovely.
Yeah, I mean, for us, like when we had our first child, who's now about to turn 11, we were living off grid in a cabin in basically like an hour from anything, and we were 3 hours from our parents. One of the big reasons we moved is just to be closer to family, because not only is it, I mean, free labor, essentially, they want to do it. Like they want to be with the kids. So it's like, it's really helpful to have just people that can come and watch the kid while you do, your farming stuff, or just like get a break for a minute, and then also bring you food and all the things that you need, especially in those first few months. I think that idea of like that rural sort of ideal of being like, we're going to go out into the country, we're going to have this big farm, it's just going to be us, it's going to be a family farm, really misses this huge psychological element of, a community, of of having people around you, of having people that can help, of having family around. Because I see it a lot where people will move to the country and they'll get really isolated and they'll have kids and they'll realize like, oh, this is really brutal. And then want, that community again. And then like us, like now we live in kind of a neighborhood, whereas before we were living like really far out. And I love having it. Like our neighbors run a daycare. It's just serendipitous, but it's really amazing. And they're awesome people. So like we've lucked out in that sense, but I feel like those are things that just don't get really talked about or enough.
It changes our conversation. Even like when we think about how the farm's going to look like 3 years, 5 years from now, and where we want to put the profits and money, we suddenly said, okay, maybe we want to put our profits into building a little house we can rent. So we have another family living on site, and part of my personal motivation to get the farm pumping is that we can hire more people so we can have more people here.
Yeah.
We want to give full-time jobs so we can create the community, because we moved here kind of like by ourselves with the hopes and dreams that we'll create some sort of momentum.
And it's no surprise that someone like Jay, our best mate, who now works full-time for us, he's an uncle for our daughter. Like he sees our daughter more than her biological uncle. So it's a beautiful thing, and what a motivation to want to build a business. Yeah, like you said, to give employment to people who you love, and they'll be around. It's really special, and really motivating.
I love that. And it becomes more than just a business. And maybe in future conversations, we can touch on more how you're adapting to having a toddler, because that's coming up. Well, Mikey and Kez, I just want to thank you all so much for your time. I love chatting with you all. I can't wait. We'll do it again next month. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Jess. Really
Thanks
appreciate
for the patience.
Oh, patience, nothing. I enjoy every moment I get to chat with you all.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Mikey and Kez. We will have them join us again next month. And in fact, Patreon members, if you have any specific questions for Mikey and Kez, let me know and I will get that to them. I'm sure they'd be down to answer those. We will link their Instagram and website in the show notes and all those good things. Otherwise, don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. If you're like, hey, I could use an end of the year tax break, ta-da! Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-till-growers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, where you sign up in the month of October, you get a shout out on the show. But the way it worked out this week, we will have our shout outs for tomorrow. So get signed up and be on the lookout or listen out for that. Otherwise, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then. Bye.